Alrighty, good evening everybody. It's Monday evening, 8 o'clock on the East Coast. I guess it's 5 o'clock out on the West Coast. That means it's the Alternative Energy Hour, and I want to thank Charlie McGrath of Wide Awake News for making this time slot available. Tonight my guest is Mr. Sterling Allen, and although Sterling did a presentation on my Thursday program, where he brought folks up to date on his European expedition. For this audience, a lot of it might be new info. So let's bring Sterling in and see what Sterling's got to tell us. How you doing tonight, man?
Good. How you doing, Gary?
Oh, I'm I'm just doing. It's hard to get excited. Sometimes life treats you like a baby treats a diaper, and this past week or so has been one of those for me. But let's hear what you've got to say. My life's not real exciting right now.
I've been sweating all day today because the rate at which things are coming my way is faster than I can handle it. Reminds me back in the days when I was a teenager playing asteroids on the old machines. You remember those asteroid games where you'd get advanced levels?
I was probably the first one on my block to have an Atari game console. I mean, I thought that was pretty cool back in the day.
And you got all these objects firing at you from every direction, and you're trying to shoot as fast as you can to keep them at bay. That's what I feel like. Except that it's not an inimical thing. It's not like all these incomings are trying to destroy me. It's just trying to keep up with all the cool stuff going on is a bit overwhelming. I'm feeling like what we need is a laboratory and a group of people with fully staffed and lots of money. Wouldn't that be cool?
Well, we can dream, but you know what the chances of that are, right?
Well, those chances are increasing. Times are changing. It's out with the old, in with the new, and we're part of the new, right?
We'd like to think so. So what?
Speaking of diapers.
Yeah, diapers. Nice segue, huh?
So yeah, you were asking about my recent trip to Europe.
Well, the audience on this program probably did not get the benefit that the Thursday night audience did. Keep in mind, here we're talking to the Wide Awake News audience on rents. And it is a different audience than what we talked to on Thursday. So I would suspect that probably 85-90% of the folks listening in right now, all the discussion that we had on Thursday about your European expedition is totally new information. They might get a kick out of hearing some of it.
All right. Well, just to give them a bit of context of what the trip was about and what I was looking for. At pezwiki.com, you'll see a listing of our top 5 exotic free energy technologies. And when I say exotic free energy, I would include in the free energy umbrella solar, wind, geothermal, tide. Those are all free for the taking from the environment. The devices that harness them are not free, but the energy source is free. When we say exotic free energy, we're talking about things which are outside of what conventional scientists would consider to be copacetic. These are things which would cause maybe a college professor to say, nope, not in my classroom, that's impossible or that's heretical. That's when we start getting interested. And so when there's a claim to a working prototype, and that's what's been getting us excited over the years, and now it's gotten to the point where several of these genres are actually having multiple teams behind them bringing technologies close to market, so that we're looking at anywhere between a few months to just a couple of years, and we'll see these technologies available for sale, where you can go buy one and at least start getting kits and stuff like that. And that could be happening just in a few months. And so we're talking about not only are these technologies clean, because they harness the will work of nature and they don't have pollution involved, but they're also very cheap. So we're talking about On the extreme end, we're talking about technologies that could be a tenth the cost of what you pay for from grid electricity. Usually when you think about distributed clean energy, you think of a big price tag, solar panels that cost $30,000, have a 30-year return on investment with the battery bank and the inverters and all that stuff, and the racks. The panels themselves are getting very cheap, but the whole system can be quite expensive to install and maintain. Not necessarily maintain. Once you got them up, they're fairly low maintenance. But that's not the case with many of these emerging technologies. We're talking about things that would be cheaper than what you pay for from the grid. And so my trip over to Europe was called Scouting for Free Energy Technologies in Europe. I was there for a couple of weeks, and while there, I either visited and saw or was on the phone with talking to inventors involved with 3 of the 5 top 5 and about 3 of the runners-up as well in the next 5 below that. So there's a lot of action going on in Europe, and these are technologies which could totally radically change the whole energy infrastructure and provide jobs, provide cheaper energy, bring down the price of food, cost of living, and basically provide a driving force to reverse the downward trend of the economic whirlpool that we're in, where we're going toward economic chaos, economic meltdown, social disruption as the infrastructure that we're used to goes away. And so my hope and motivation is to not only help bring these things forward eventually to purchase, but to let people know that they're on their way so that they can get out of the doldrums, because depression is not just an economic word. It has a very real emotional counterpart in people. And as you get involved in a depression mentality, it's a negative feedback loop. You get depressed, so you get less productive. Less productive you are, the worse your situation gets. The worse your situation gets, the more depressed you get. And thus it creates this negative, vicious cycle. And if people know that there's a solution on its way, even though it could even be 2 years out, just knowing that it's coming can have a huge, hyping force to get people to lift up their chins and realize that we don't have to give way to the planned economic collapse of the powers that be. The powers that be want to turn us into slaves. They want us to go into economic collapse. They want to reduce the planet's population down to a more manageable 500 million, according to the Georgia Guidestone. Just Google Georgia Guidestone if you're not familiar with that. This is etched on stone in Georgia, where they want to see the world's population reduced that much.
And of course, there's also the fact that most Western economies right now are heavily married to this phenomena called the petrodollar, and it appears that just about anything that might threaten the petrodollar, like maybe selling oil for gold, makes you a target of our own military. So I sometimes wonder if perhaps some of these technologies aren't being withheld because they just might threaten that hegemony of the petrodollar.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, and that's also another reason for people in this audience to get on board with the whole free energy cause, because it is a peaceful revolution to provide an alternative to the petrodollar, an alternative to the powers that be, to render them obsolete by coming up with an alternative that is distributed, clean, renewable, safe, affordable. And we could even peg a new currency, a new way of living to this rising distributed solution that empowers the individual.
You're going to have to hold that thought, Sterling. We do have to take a commercial break. Folks, please do bear with us. We do have to take care of our advertisers. God bless them. If not for them, there'd be no show, but we'll be back in just a few minutes. You know, Sterling, one of these days we got to do a show, and it's probably going to take a little planning because a little bit of research will have to go into it to be righteous about it. But just what would happen if some magical technology did come down the pike and absolutely freed us from any requirement to buy gasoline or petroleum or natural gas or anything like that. You know, what would happen to the United States economy, for example? I mean, when you think about how many people are dependent on that industry for their livelihood, I mean, it actually would be a significant disruption. I mean, we might dream of such a day, but in reality, can you imagine the disruption to the economy?
Yeah, and how disruptive it would be dependent on a lot of factors, but it's not going to be like oil is going to become obsoleted overnight. It's going to be phased out. It'll be transitioned out over time because we won't have the money to go replace all of our vehicles just tomorrow. We've got to build the new vehicles, got to build the new engines, the new electric vehicles. There's a lot of money and time it'll take to transition from one modality to another. And so even though it will be disruptive, it doesn't have to be chaotically so.
Well, I would agree with that if it was planned and implemented properly. But, you know the way these things go.
Well, when you talk about planned and implemented with today's government, you're talking about an inept and a very corrupt, tainted, vested interest set of power brokers who are not going to let go of their reign of power. So it's almost like you have to go with it just not knowing what you're getting into and just jump in the deep end and start swimming. Just go with it. Because if we try and plan it out too much, I mean, look at the newlywed couples that would not get married if they knew what they were getting into.
Yeah, well, I probably would have done it anyway, but that's just me. You know.
Yeah, if they knew all of the ramifications, all the costs, the responsibility, and the hard times, as well as the good times. Sometimes it's easier just to jump and just roll with the punches as they come along.
Yeah. Still, though, that discussion, if we could do kind of a, positive aspects, negative aspects, these are the good things that would happen if such a dream came real. These are the bad
You know who's
things.
really good to talk about that you could have on as a guest?
Who?
Is Joel Garvin.
Well, I hope everybody stayed with us through the break. To answer a question I did see come up in the Wide Awake News chat, I took a quick look at the schedule, and my understanding is that Charlie McGrath will be here during the second hour, and that his guest tonight is a fellow by the name of Rob Hannes. I'm not sure I've ever heard Rob speak, but I'll certainly be looking forward to hearing what he has to say. In any case, Sterling Allen, we rudely interrupted your diatribe for that blatantly commercial break, which we need to take. And during our little respite there, we were kicking around the idea, well, gee, one of these days we're going to have to do a show about, what would be the impact if one of these exotic free energy technologies were to be released on the market. Just think of how disruptive that might be. Now, is that something that bears discussing for the live audience, or do you want to continue with your diatribe you were on earlier?
Well, I do think it deserves an entire show, and I would recommend, as a good spokesman for that concept, Joel Garvin. He's thought along those lines and talked along those lines extensively and is very good at articulating what the ramifications would be for good and for bad.
Well, you know,
And
that is a topic of a show that I would love to do one of these days. So, you know, I'm gonna put the burden on you to, you know, make sure you get me his contact information. I'm going to see if I can't arrange something with him, because I think that would be a conversation that would be very illuminating. In any case, you were going to tell us about some of your exploits in Europe. You had a pretty good time while you were over there. I mean, I got pictures of you, you know, with all the movers and shakers and alternative energy when you were in Europe. So, you know, give us a little taste. What all did you get into?
okay. Well, the first stop was at the ECAT Conference in Zurich, where for the first time people from around the world got together who are parties to, licensees of, potential investors in, and just fans of the ECAT, which is a cold fusion technology by Andrea Rossi of Leonardo Corporation. He's originally from Italy, now lives in Miami, and has been making remarkable progress over the years in coming up with technology that could go to market. And he tends to be a bit rough when it comes to the scientific method. He's not an academic who wants to cross all the T's and dot on the I's. He's basically wants to let the marketplace prove the technology. Let the customers, the happy customers who are powering their, heating their homes with cold fusion, be the witness to the world that it's real, it works, and it's here. So he's kind of pell-mell moving in that direction, and people who want him to take a more measured approach and to have solid demonstrations of input versus output that any academic would be happy with, he frustrates them to the nth degree, because that's not his modus operandi. And I believe there's a role for people like him in the planet. He's out in front taking the flak in this war against the mental blocks against such things. And so I think he deserves number one position in the cold fusion genre. And for quite a while, he's been number one in our top 5 of all exotic technologies coming forward. He's recently, as of this trip, has bumped down to number 2 position because of another technology that's coming forward that we can talk about in a minute. But cold fusion is not junk science. There have been many hundreds of researchers who have come up with more energy out than in using variations of the Pons-Fleischmann effect. They call it cold fusion because basically you're getting transmutation of elements on the atomic scale, producing excess energy, more energy out than what it takes to make them happen. Usually you have to have temperatures of the sun, hundreds of millions of degrees, to accomplish that. But in cold fusion, you're able to accomplish that using other mechanisms at close to room temperature. And so Andrea Rossi's technology is out there in the front publicly. There are, I don't know, I'd say probably a good 40 full-time websites focused on his work, where all they do is talk about Andrea Rossi's ECAT.
And maybe you can confirm a rumor. I heard. Obviously, I'm not sure because I wasn't there to see it. But you were there at Rossi's show there. Mm-hmm. I heard that there were some disaffected people who were apparently threatening Rossi in some way, and that was why he felt the need to have bodyguards. Can you make a comment on that?
That is total BS. Not complete. There's a scrap of truth to that, and I'm glad you're letting me set the record straight. The worst the inimical feeling got might have been at a table during dinner when somebody's saying, gee, I was hoping to have a demonstration of the technology. I'm here to invest, and I was hoping to be able to see some evidence. That's the worst comment I heard during our entire conference, and I never saw any kind of derogatory behavior or comments made in the General Assembly. The bodyguards were actually provided by the host. There was one full-time bodyguard who he brought, and by the end of the conference, he was basically out of a job. He was out smoking cigarettes.
Well, we're going to have to take another break, folks. It is bottom of the hour, so please do stay tuned. We'll be right back after these important messages from our sponsors. All right. Don't forget to send me that guy's email address. I want to get in touch with him and see if he might be willing to come on and engage in that discussion. That could be an interesting discussion. Might make some folks think.
Yeah, it would. Let me pull that up and I'll Skype it to you right now. He does tend to get long-winded and not stick to time schedules, so...
So he might be better on the Thursday show than on the Monday show?
Well, if you've got advertising coming in and the music turning on, that would actually be the preferred venue, because then he's forced to stop.
Might be.
Very nice guy, very professional, very articulate, but he doesn't know what a clock is.
Yeah, actually, this is a pretty tough venue, because you just get to the point where you're completing your thought, then it's time for another break.
Yeah.
Now we've got 2 more segments left, so I'm as much as possible, I'm going to try and keep my mouth shut and let you carry the ball. The information on all of your European exploits is brand new to this audience. I think I heard you talking a little bit about it on some other show. I can't remember what it was. I think it was on RBN. But I'm not sure how much of a crossover audience there is. So for this,
actually, the audience that we're talking to right now on the Justin TV are the ones who are going to appreciate the remainder of the comments about the ECAT conference. And yes, there was a report made by one of the people present that there was some inimical stuff, bodyguards, and that it was not a peaceful setting. That was totally a twisting. Yes, there was a full-time bodyguard. Another guy who's an engineer looks like a bodyguard, and probably serves partially as that role, but is not there as a bodyguard. So there were 2 people looking like bodyguards. One was a bodyguard hired by the host, and basically, in my opinion, were unnecessary, unneeded. There was no threat, no people crying from the audience, off with his head. None of that kind of stuff. It was, if anything, he was like a rock star. That's the way he was being treated. Yes, there was some disaffection. Individually, people maybe had expectations for one thing and were disappointed that it was another. But overall, it was very positive.
Well, we don't want to spend the whole 2 segments on Rossi, so try and wrap Rossi up pretty quick, and let's talk about some of the other items. But bottom line is, I'll let you carry it, and I'll try to, I'll introduce you, and then I'll shut up and let you carry it.
Yeah, I'd like to cover that point on the Smart Scarecrow show Thursday night, because I want to put at rest what Mark Danzig got all tight in his undies. He wasn't there. He was going based on that one negative report that there was basically an uprising there, and there wasn't.
Yeah.
Not even close. And he was all excited that I was wrong in my reporting, not giving both sides of the story. And that's why it's good to have more than one media there, because you get a more complete picture by reading multiple sources.
Well,
but
to be honest with you, that's why. Alrighty, I'm hoping that the audience bought one of everything that our advertisers offered, so that they feel loved. And but Sterling Allen and I are back now from the break. And Sterling, you were going to finish up your thoughts on Rossi's conference. I'm sorry about the commercial interruptions. It seems like just about the time you're ready to give the punchline, we have to stop for a break. But please do continue.
Yeah, we don't need to belabor much more on the setting of the Cold Fusion Conference. We can talk more about that on Thursday's show, where the audience is a little more keyed into that. But the cold fusion technology is on its way. There are many companies bringing it forward. And Andrew Rossi claims to have a 1 megawatt unit that you can buy right now for $1.5 million. 1 megawatt is about the size, as much power as a small locomotive. It's a lot of power.
I'll tell you what, Sterling, I'm going to start digging through the cushions on my couch and see if I can find that 1.5 million. I would like to have one.
Yeah, that would be great.
Now,
next up,
one of the disappointments I heard is that neither of the two big providers, Rossi or this other outfit from Greece, Defcalion, neither of them is going to be prepared to release a home-sized unit for a price that average Joe can get their hands on anytime real soon. Do you wish to comment on that before we move on to other subjects?
That's a very difficult market because when you put something in somebody's home, it's got to pass all kinds of safety considerations because you have drunken people going down there messing with stuff, whereas in an industrial setting, it's much more safe. You don't have to go through the same rigors that you do in a home setting.
So one of the things that might be holding back the introduction of a relatively small device that I might go buy off the end cap at Home Depot and have a plumber come by and install for me in my home, the ability to get our hands on a device like that is probably being slowed more by concerns over safety certifications, like a United Underwriters Lab type thing.
Right.
I can understand.
And they do now have their approvals on the industrial one, so they've got the full green light to go forward on that.
Well, hopefully, some experience with it in an industrial setting, maybe that'll give people a warm fuzzy to the point where it'll be, rapid consumer product.
Right. The next stop on my trip was over to Lausanne, where they have the Tokamak reactor, one of about a dozen on the planet, at the EPFL, I believe, university, one of the number 12 in the most prestigious universities in the world. And the guy there, Nicolas Chauvin, who runs lenr-cars.com, has an office in a research park there on campus, and he is pulling together a kit for enabling universities to replicate cold fusion on a reliable, dependable basis. Not only the components to build a kit, but the instrumentation to measure it consistently. He's with a group of people who are going to be replicating the Chelani device with his cooperation and selling it for about $25,000, again, for universities to be able to sign off on cold fusion as being real. And so I spent 2-3 days with him. Very intelligent, active guy right there in a very prestigious setting. So that was a great experience. And I actually haven't even done a report on that yet, on the cold fusion thing. And I posted a video, and you helped me with that. I appreciate that. Next stop on the trip was a place that I can't give the location or the inventor. I can only speak.
One of these top secret labs somewhere, huh?
Yeah. I saw
somewhere in a top secret facility, buried deep under the Alps or someplace.
Is now number 1 in our top 5.
But you can't talk about it.
I can talk generally. I can't talk specifically.
You're not much fun, Sterling.
I can say that it's super easy, super cheap, and very power dense. And when it comes out, it will be game changing because it is so easy. It'll open the minds of scientists worldwide and get people, engineers, working on easier, faster, quicker, more condensed versions of it for all the different applications from small to big. Probably wouldn't make much sense to go smaller than 500 watts because it's a mechanical design. But I'm talking to the inventor about open sourcing it, and he is agreeable to open sourcing. We're just in process of signing some paperwork so we can launch a crowdfunding thing to give him what he wants before we open up the full permission to. Well, he's basing it on a condition that if we can raise a certain amount, he will divulge his plans to the public and let them open source it. He's got advanced versions that he's shown me and that he will license to licensees, which contain a lot more engineering. And we're talking about something 1 meter cubed that would provide 1 megawatt of power. In contrast,
now,
for
couple
example,
obvious questions. Any third-party validation?
Limited. There is some data and there's some scientific analysis.
I mean, is there a noted third party who's willing to come forward giving this thing
Not
his
yet.
blessing?
He doesn't want that because it is so simple that anyone who walks through his door is going to be able to walk away knowing how it works. And he doesn't want people walking through the door and leaving with that knowledge. Even so supposedly trusted engineers from third-party groups. And so basically people coming to the door through the door for license agreements are going to have to be willing to do their own testing and satisfaction that it is what it's claimed to be. And they're going to have money in escrow so that when it proves out, the money changes hands and they can't just walk away. And so, there are patents that can be filed on this thing. It is actually unprecedented. There's no analog that they've been able to find in the world of patents for the core design that could be open sourced. And I took the 2 key words from this technology and I grabbed a domain name, a .com domain name, that shows you these are words which by themselves would have millions of usages in the free world. And yet, putting them together like this, no one's done it before in a .com name, which is unprecedented that something so simple would be so unclaimed. And so it shows you this is a technology that has been overlooked. It could have easily been implemented during the Industrial Revolution. And I believe it's destined to come forth at this time to do an end run around the powers that be that want to turn us all into economic slaves of their new world order. And so,
now, of course, you understand that the skeptics out there are going to say, "Hey, you're asking us to provide, even in a crowdfunding scenario, and all I'm asked to chip in is whatever I can afford, $50, $100, whatever I got in my pocket that I can afford to lose." Still, we're asking folks to get behind an invention that basically they know nothing about. They've got no third-party validation, no plans, no nothing. So it's purely on faith. And there's that music again. We're gonna have our last segment after this brief commercial pause, and hopefully we'll finish our thoughts on this item after this break. We'll be right back, folks. Have you talked to an attorney about that crowdfunding thing and what liability you might face with it?
Yeah, we've got an attorney on board, and will be advising us both on our side and on his side. That's what's been taking time, is getting the attorneys to come up with wording in the contracts and whatnot.
Yeah, I'd be real concerned about the liability issue personally, but I think we've had this part of the discussion.
The thing
before.
is, if you have full disclosure of what it is, and you're letting people know, here's what we have, here's the information we have, and based on this information, knowing what the risks are, what you have or what you don't have, I don't think you'll have problems. It is going to be a huge task to come up with the amount of money that he wants to be raised before he'll open source it.
Oh, you betcha.
And if we don't raise that money, we'll just have to wait until much further down the road. It could be a year, it could be 6 months, but on the planet that I live on, 6 months from now could be a little bit too long. We could have already reached economic meltdown by then, where people are rioting, looting, burning down central city buildings in every town in America and blowing up bridges, infrastructure going to pot. that's the world we're headed to.
I don't think you'll see that until the welfare checks don't come through.
And that's not far away.
Oh, I'm not sure. They keep printing up
You go
money.
into hyperinflation with QE3?
Well, yeah, there will be some of that. I mean, frankly, I don't know if you've seen it recently, but I did some shopping over the weekend, and some of the staple items that I had not bought in about 6 weeks had gone up by almost a third.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, hyperinflation, I think, is already a reality. It's just a matter of, when people wake up and see it.
Yeah. And so what's going to happen, if we're going to avoid hitting the wall as a civilization, we're going to have to see the handwriting on the wall and make an about-face turn before that. And this technology gives us the mechanism, the physical tool to do that.
Well, then again, like any dramatic change, there's also a disruption associated with the release of this new technology.
Mm-hmm.
There's costs associated with everything, and it's hard to say.
The poor typewriter producers went out of business with the word processor.
And buggy whip manufacturers and so on and so forth. I mean, life's like that.
But, I don't know. I would say that disruption is much less than the total wipeout of civilization if we hit the wall. And hitting the wall, metaphorically, is, when the drunkard loses everything. He loses his house, loses his family, he's in jail. He can't go any lower. And we don't want to hit the wall.
Yeah, I think Gerald Celente summed it up the best. I might be mistaken, but I think that was a shorter than usual break. That means there must be an advertising slot or two that could be sold during that particular commercial break. That word to any potential advertisers out there. Now, Sterling, as we were leaving for the break, we were kind of left with a cliffhanger. We were talking about an exotic technology that you're thinking about getting some kind of a crowdfunding thing put together for a technology that we cannot really get any sort of disclosure for before we're asked to donate. Tell us what you can about this technology. What's going to entice somebody to part with, 10, 15, 20, 50, maybe $100 of their hard-earned money on the hope that such a thing might come real?
This is something that any town in the world has at least one person with the skills and the resources necessary to start making these things for himself and his neighbors using readily available materials in his town. Don't have to ship stuff in from China. Don't have to have exotic materials. Don't have to have a PhD in physics. We're talking any machinist or a mechanic who knows how to do gears and some welding and make some physical apparatus could start making these things, these power devices that could provide power cheaper than anything you can get from the grid. And so overnight, you could have people all over the world with new jobs creating devices that are going to bring down the price of power, making people independent from the grid, and changing the paradigm of the energy infrastructure as we see it today, and taking the bullseye off of any central group and dispersing it among all. So it not only is distributed energy, it's distributed manufacturing, it's distributed business cycle. And we'll be able to provide some data on the performance of the existing devices, and even before we can disclose how it works, just that it works, and why we believe this is worth open sourcing, and why we are confident that this will work once we get the funding for the open source. It's going to be a tough sell. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to do the best we can. And if we, like I said, if we can't get the money raised, then we'll just have to wait however many months it's going to be before other forces kind of either force it to go open source, because once it's in the marketplace, it'll be very easy to reverse engineer. It will, once the first units are sold, that's basically the start date for open sourcing.
Well, now, Sterling, this is our last segment. So, I don't want to interrupt you any more than absolutely necessary, but I did want to remind you that, we've only got about 6-7 minutes left in tonight's broadcast.
Okay, let's get to number 3, which would be the linear force generator.
Let's get to some meat and potatoes, man.
Actually, number 4 is a technology I saw in Ireland. This is a company that has a very interesting background.
Shall we say jaded?
Controversial, I think.
Controversial. All right, I'll go with that too.
I followed the story very closely. I know people who were involved in the forums who were studying this under NDA, and anyone that I have talked to who was under NDA was convinced that they had something, okay? And so the science, in my opinion, was there, but the approach was controversial, how they were trying to bring it forward. Anyway, they started with an over unity technology that they made a big splash in The Economist about 2005, tried to demonstrate a magnet motor version of it, all magnet motors that flopped. Then they did an electromagnetic version about a year later that was kind of a dud. Then they came up with a solid state version, no moving parts. The problem they had, it was producing a lot of heat, and they were trying to work around that. Then finally they said, well, heat's good, can be good, let's go with it. And they optimized the heat effect, and they've created a HEPA heat unit that flashes water to steam instantly, and then they put the steam into a heat exchanger to take cold water into hot water, whether 40 degrees or 60 degrees or 100 degrees C are the 3 markets for culinary hot water, commercial hot water systems. And they had a prototype, and they brought in the 2 largest electric hot water heater companies in the world who saw the demonstration. Their scientists signed off on it, and they're now under contract to bring this technology to market through their distribution networks. And each of those 2 companies owns more than 30% of the global market share for that sector, the hot water heater. We're talking about a hot water heater you could buy that would cost the same as the hot water heater it's replacing, but would only use 1/5 of the amount of electricity to run it. That's because the energy is being harvested not from the wall, but the wall is maybe just running a circuit. The energy is coming from somewhere else. And that somewhere else is something scientists can go hog wild and figuring out in the years to come. But the bottom line is it works. They're under contract. They're taking it to market. They've gone straight to the major leagues. And the reason they're in number 4 position is because they're 18 months minimum to market. That's how long it takes to get these big super tankers to move, to change direction, because there's a lot of changes that will need to be made and steps that will need to be made to do the engineering, the testing, the certifications on these units that will be installed in people's homes. And so that, in my opinion, is very exciting news. I got to witness the thing in operation, saw the cold water go in, hot water come out. On demand, I saw another unit that's been tested for some 5 weeks continuously. They were just running there on the floor. Looked really cool. And so I'm convinced that they've been vindicated. I was there in person, saw the contracts that had been signed. Of course, I can't go sharing that around. That's confidential information, but I can say they exist. And so that's number 4. Number 3 in our top 5 is a company called Defcalion, which is no, I take that back. Defcalion's now off the top 5. Number 3 is a linear motor generator setup where you have a small motor powering a bigger generator that loops back to keep the motor running and produces energy left over. if there's ever was a heresy, that's it.
Yeah, that rings of absolute heresy to me. That there's something about diminishing returns or something. I seem to recall something from physics class that says that can't work.
Right. Well, it can't if you're thinking classical, but if you start using your imagination and you talk to scientists like I do who play with exotic stuff all the time, they say that probably what's going on here is you have the motor and generator are out of phase, and you create some kind of a harmonic between them, and that harmonic acts as a conduit to energy coming from the vacuum, from zero-point energy, from somewhere else. So it's not what you see is what you get. There's something else showing up there. And as far as demonstrations of the technology, I saw a video of a system running by a guy who's taken it to market, and he said that they tested it 50 hours continuous. We're talking, this is a technology that couldn't run more than a few seconds if there wasn't something else going on. And they ran it 50 hours before the belt started smoking and had to shut it off. But they just need to do some engineering, and they will be taking it to market. And the day after I saw that video and met that guy, email showed up in my inbox about a company in Spain that has the same thing. Go to technocontrol.com, that's control spelled with a K, and click under the products, and there's some 50 products that show up. This is a company has been in business for many years, and they have a product called TK5000 generator or something like that. There's two little items on the left-hand column. The company does fire suppression as their focus, but this is something that they came across and are taking commercial. And it says on their product page, it's a self-running system that doesn't take any fuel. And it shows a video of this motor generator setup, powering this stuff externally. They are in process of coming up with a 1 megawatt version of this, and they're not ready to have visitors come in yet. So I wasn't able to come in yet, but they said when they're ready, they'll let me know. I can come in with third-party testing to my heart's content and let the world know about the technology.
All right, Sterling, we've only got a couple minutes left here. You wanna give a little quick summation?
Okay. Bottom line is that there's a lot going on in the alternative energy sector of the exotic variety. There is such a thing as free energy outside of the conventional versions, and they are on their way to market. And everyone in this audience has something they can do to get involved. We have what you can do to help page on our website to give you some ideas, whether it's linking to our site from yours, or putting up a banner, or putting in some donations, or tinkering in your garage to replicate some of these effects. There's something everyone can do. You need to add free energy to your quiver of activities to help defeat the New World Order and come up with a better world that is clean, affordable, safe, and the kind of world that we all hope for. And so I would encourage you to go to freeenergynews.com, the easiest domain name to remember of our domains. Take it to our top 5 and follow along.
Okay, that's freeenergy.com or pdsn.com. Quite a few websites that Sterling offers, and of course, I've got smartscarecrow.com. All my stuff is centralized there. Folks, we've come to the end of yet another Alternative Energy Hour. Please do stand by for Charlie McGrath and his guest, Rob Hannes, and you all have a good evening. We'll see you next week. Alrighty, and gee, it looks like Sterling cut the connection on me, so I'm all alone, just little old me. Look, I'm looking at the Smart Scarecrow chat room, and frankly, in the Wide Awake News chat room, I'm seeing many of the same things. Folks, agree or disagree as you see fit. Sterling calls them as he sees them. He may be right. He may be wrong. Most of the time, he seems to be wrong. But there's one thing I can definitely agree with Sterling about. Okay, we need as much as possible to give people hope. I realize that, that's, it's old. You're used to hearing politicians, trying to get you on a bad case of hopium. But the fact of the matter is, it's easy to get really, really depressed and really, really down with things being the way they are. Some of the things going on in the alternative energy sector do bring a hopeful message, and that's part of what we're trying to do here, is provide a hopeful message to outweigh some of the doldrums that people get from other places. In any case, that was the Alternative Energy Hour for Monday, October 1st, 2012. If anybody out there in the chat room happens to have any last-minute questions they want to throw at me before I cut the connection, happy to entertain them. But I do need to get this thing boosted over to YouTube and also put up on Justin TV as a rerun. Is this a vote for Obama's subliminal message? You can take this any way you want to take it, but if Obama was the last man on earth, I would not vote for him as president. And if Mitt Romney were the last man on earth, I would not vote for him as president. You take that in any way you want. Where's Mark? Dancy? I'm not sure. Let's see. Anybody find any website Sterling mentioned? Haven't found anything yet. I've seen the website he's talking about. It's okay. The videos that he was talking about are animations. It is not a running device. I don't know that much about the gizmo, but to me it looks like another iteration of a magnet motor, which from my point of view has little or no chance of being successful. Somebody's asking what's on for Thursday. Thursday I have a guest coming on that's going to discuss an HHO device that he's got. He's got a slightly different wrinkle on it. He indicates that he may be creating a combustible gas other than the traditional HHO. Apparently this is a heavier than air gas that has some unusual properties. In any case, we'll just have to keep an open mind and see what he's got to tell us. Checking any other issues. Clowns in a circus. Well, I've been called worse, Tommy Reed, usually by my wife, so if you think that insulted me, guess again. Good solar panels. How much? It depends. I'm seeing various prices on. The problem with solar panels nowadays is no matter who you buy them from, chances are they're made by the same mama-san over in China. There's a few manufacturers of solar panels still left in the United States, but they are getting to be few and far between. I hate like hell buying solar panels from the Chinese, but if I want to go solar, I may not have much choice. Yeah, they're getting down around. Actually, if you're willing to build your own panels, I've seen individual elements that allow you to build your own panels for well under $1 a watt. But you got to be handy. You got to be able to solder the darn things together. I mean, it's not like it's hard. It's just a pain in the butt to put them together. But yeah, pre-assembled panels made in China from places like Harbor Freight and some other discounters. I've seen for $1 a watt, and in some cases even a little bit less. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, Tommy. I was you said something about clowns in a circus. I don't take it personal. I don't take anything personal. That's just my way. In any case, folks, I think that's going to have to be it. Believe it or not, I have to edit the living daylights out of this file to get all the bumper music out of it before I can boost it to YouTube. So I've got quite a bit to do yet tonight before I can call it a night. See you on Thursday. Y'all have a good evening.